It is 4:31. I'm going to call our work session together, a committee meeting for personnel, and I'm going to turn over the committee chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Call the Personnel Committee to order. We have one item on the agenda, and this is to discuss extension of the COVID sick leave policy. There's a policy that was part of a federal act that expired on 12/31. And so we're here to have a discussion as to what we do as an organization regarding sick pay leave related to COVID-19 moving forward. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Barnes.
Mr. Chairman, on the phone today we have Betty Lynn. Ms. Lynn is a highly respected employment attorney. She has represented the city of Stephenville for many years in HR-related situations. I asked her to be on the phone today so she could explain the Family First Corona Relief Act, which was passed on, I believe, March 27th of 2020, went into effect April 1st, in which government employers who employed less than 600 employees were required to allocate 80 hours of sick time for COVID relief or for COVID-related illnesses, whether it's an employee had to stay home being quarantined themselves, a family member, if a child had to have a caregiver because school was out due to COVID. There were several different things. And I'll ask Ms. Lynn to tell us about the FFCRA and how it applied to the cities, or two cities. And where we go from there is we have a recommendation. I've got some statistics for you, but we have a recommendation as well. Ms. Lynn?
Well, thank you for having me on the call with you. The thing that I would like to let you all know I take the best credit for the most is removing Stephenville as the only city that ever rejected civil service and got rid of it after they had gotten it by accident, kind of. So that was before any of you were born, but we were able to succeed. So let's go on to the FFCRA. The good thing for cities is that the FFCRA provisions that were being explained to you expired as of December 31st. So at the current time, there are no requirements for cities to provide any type of leave other than what we provide as a matter of your city's policy. There was an extension passed for private industry and private sector employers that they could continue to take tax write-offs if they continue to permit their employees to have those leaves. Now, we don't get tax write-offs from the government, so that doesn't apply to the city. So, because you still have some COVID issues in town, the question is whether the city council wants to develop its own program in order to, it would be an extension of or expansion of your sick leave that you would have for a temporary period. And if so, what would be the conditions of that? And I think that's what the city manager wants to talk about and get y'all's thoughts on that. It could be done. Many of you may remember a few years ago, one thing we have to worry about or watch about is that we don't give away money. If you remember a few years ago, we put in an incentive program for people that scored well on their performance evaluations, and we called that a Christmas bonus that was paid for Christmas, but that was all grounded upon performing well during the year. I've given this some thought today, and I don't know exactly what Mr. Bourne has maybe thought of, but you might be able to do something in terms of performance evaluation by providing some amount of leave to the employed, and that would no repayment or anything be required, but it be conditioned upon when they return to work that for the rest of the year they get that really good performance evaluation. That might spur them on to good performance. But I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Barnes so he can be able to he and others on the staff have been talking about.
Betty,
Yes, sir.
There was a question that came up as to whether or not cities were required to participate in FFCRA. Can you address that for a moment?
Yes, during the period of time starting on April 1st, cities were required to participate. It was mandated for all employers, except for the very smallest ones, and you all were not into that number. So we had to actually do that. So that didn't violate any constitutional provision because to use a term that's going to be outdated in a few days, the federal law trumps the city law and the state law. So when the federal law requires something, we do it and follow the law. But now it doesn't require it. So the question is, do we want to do it? And if we can do it, can we do it legally without violating the Constitution or any ordinances or anything in your charter?
Thank you for that, Betty.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to give you some statistics. Between March 1st and December 31st, or actually January 3rd, under FFCRA, there were 14,272 hours of emergency sick leave allocated. Of that, 1,873 of those hours were used, or 13%. A total of 47 employees have used some of their emergency sick leave, and in that 47, 5 have used all of their emergency sick leave. So we have about 120 employees that have not used that time at all. Our employees, I think the next number I give you will show you that our employees do understand that that is for COVID alone, or for special circumstances alone. Because in that same time, we've had 10,926 sick time hours earned by our employees. Of that number, 4,038 or 37% of those hours have been used. And those numbers track. Those are not unusual numbers for us. In talking with the chairman about this, there were several ideas bounced back and forth. The last idea was requesting that you just extend the CCRF, the FFCRA, to March 31st? Ricky?
Yeah.
Wasn't that right? March 31st.
Because it went into effect April 1, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
that was to get a calendar year out of it.
That would, Ricky's right, that would get us to a calendar year of having emergency COVID sick leave. At that time, we can assess the availability of the vaccine. To date, I know for a fact that that Erath County has received 100 doses of the Moderna vaccine. It is my understanding that this week we are to receive an additional 200 doses, and we are hoping next week that expands. The 100 doses went to HEB. Walgreens was approved, so they're getting an allocation in addition to HEB's this week. Dr. Doggett told me this morning or last night, I don't remember when I talked to him, that he was approved to be a distribution point. So he has asked for 400 doses. So there's a possibility that we can start seeing the number of doses coming to Erath County going up. So when the chairman and I first started talking about this, it was like, okay, if this group is eligible to take vaccine, then they don't get the sick leave after they're eligible for vaccine. And then there's so many variables in that. I mean, you start asking, well, what if the vaccine's not available when they're eligible? What if a family member gets COVID and they have to stay home and keep the family member? You know, there are just a lot of variables. And so in talking with Mr. Thurman, he and I both felt that probably the best way to do this is, the simplest way is just to extend the benefits of FFCRA till March 31st. And then if we need to reassess at that time, we just simply reassess and see what we do.
So I've got a question for Betty. It sounded like you may had some concern as to whether or not we can even legally do that.
I have a little bit, but I was thinking in my head as that was being described, whether we could, if you wanted to do that, to pass a resolution, so that we're not giving it, it's not being given away for free, it's not time off for nothing, but it is, it's part of the pandemic. I think you would want to emphasize that this is something it's something that's unheard of in our lifetime, and that it's stricken the city pretty hard, and it continues to do so, and unless and until we get everybody vaccinated, or as many want to be, that we feel that it's in the best interest of all the citizens that we do this for our employees, because where will our citizens be if our ambulance personnel or our fire personnel and others cannot get sick leave and recuperate and be back on the line? And so I think that because of the nature of it, it's a little different from the normal giving something for nothing. Like when we, and similar, you think about the Christmas bonus, that was one where we had to have a place for the quarrels. And I think you could have one here if you needed to create one. You might be able to create one by having something happen in the future after the pandemic is over. I don't know what that would be, but I can't imagine anyone also. You always have to think, because who's going to sue you if you do something that's outside the Constitution? I can't really think of anybody that would sue you for providing more city employees more time off so they can recuperate and come back to work and get the work done and help citizens. How do you all feel about it? Do you think that's sound reasoning on my part?
Mr. Barnes, do we currently have sick leave outside of COVID sick leave for employees?
Yes, sir. Employees do receive sick time. I think it's 3 hours per payday. It's 2 weeks of sick time per year. Yes, sir. It is one of the regular benefits.
How does that differ then from the COVID sick leave and it being unconstitutional? What am I missing? Sorry.
That would certainly be something for Miss Lynn to answer, but from a layman's point of view, I don't see a huge difference. It's to me, it would just be adding an additional benefit, as it were, even though it's a short-term benefit to our employees. Is that?
And I agree with that description. It is simply a fringe benefit that we have decided to give at least for a certain period of time to reward our employees. That's what all fringe benefits do, is to remain competitive and also reward employees for jobs well done and loyalty to the city, so we don't have to be hiring new people all the time. I think that would be another way, maybe even a better one than what I first suggested, is that we're simply adding another type of sick leave to our sick leave program. And this is a temporary one that we will be looking at every, I think March is, 60 days away or so. However many days apart that we, say every 2 months or every 3 months, we'll reevaluate it. But for now, we're creating another sick leave plan, or another element of our sick leave plan.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would pass muster if someone were to choose to file a lawsuit, but I sincerely doubt would happen.
So under the FFCRA, were employees required to use their existing time first before they got into the 2
No.
weeks?
No, sir.
If it met one of the requirements listed in the FFCRA, then it went straight to that 80 hours.
Okay, and then there's 2 different types of leave. So there was the emergency paid sick leave,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the expanded
Yes, sir.
What's
Under
the-
under the expanded, the city was required to pay 2/3 of the sick leave for a period of time, and I don't remember what it was. And the employee would be charged 1/3 of the sick leave. Again, that was because if somebody, I'll give you a great example. This guy's young to me, but a young fireman in his 40s worked for me in another city. I got a message not long ago that this young man had spent, I don't know, 15 days in intensive care with COVID, in addition to the time before he went to intensive care and the time after he went to intensive care. He not only used all of the FFCRA, he used a significant portion of all of his paid time. But the 2/3 helped him work it out longer. And again, I don't remember how long Clint was off work. I don't remember the details of it. He works for even another city now too, so. But I do know that he was into his time off, his personal time off quite a bit due to his exposure to COVID.
And Alan, do we have, and as far as cost-wise, if we extended this for 3 months to March 31st, cost-wise, it can be covered with the dollars that we have already received?
That's correct.
Okay.
How much of that have we?
We received $1.2 million, and the last update that I got, probably a week or 10 days ago, was we've spent somewhere around $300,000. Monica told me $250,000, but I've learned that you kind of add a little bit just to cushion it.
So that was public safety salaries.
Oh, it's all employees?
So that was public safety salaries related to COVID, plus our restaurant program, our grant program, our PPE we purchased.
What we did is one of the allowable expenses was the allocated salaries for frontline employees, police and fire. We submitted our salaries to TDM as our expenses for COVID. And what we have done with that, with the money, is rather than to supplant salaries, we kind of held it off to the side unofficially, and it has funded our grant program to our businesses. It's funded both rounds of the restaurant. It's funded purchase of PPE for our police and fire. So yes, it's been used for the needs that we have and the programs that we have for our response to COVID.
Okay. And I don't want to get off topic, but I want to make, I guess it's relevant related to how we can use those funds for this. So we need to make sure we get all 1.2 million of that. So at any time we can throw those salaries in.
It's already been done. We submitted a little over $2.5 million worth of salaries.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to get the 1.2 regardless.
I know we've gotten some of it already. I don't know how much.
Oh, it's extra small.
About half of it.
Or just.
Well, that would be a good way to fund it if you have extra funds.
Or actually about 400,000.
But we have spent all the money, we have allocated the money to wages, so we've collected 1.2, or not, maybe not collected it all. We've submitted $2 million against the 1.2 million.
Correct.
And so therefore, we don't have any other money to spend, other than what you're saying is we're pocketing money that we could spend on other projects, instead of using it towards general fund or something. Because we should be able to do it to general fund as well, to offset a street project or whatever if we didn't spend it there.
Yes, or if that's the will of the council. Correct.
Well,
So there's about 900,000 of that's been,
That
you
has
can
not-
say that was salaries.
Right.
Okay. that were already budgeted. I guess that's the key. That was,
It's, well, I'm not gonna get in the weeds with that, yes, sir.
If it's permissible to use any money for salaries, that would help, that would erase any concern about constitutional issues.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
of course, I'm not a budget person, so I'm not familiar with what we may have available or not. So I'm just saying that would ease anything from the state constitution problems that I mentioned. Not problem, but people are, perhaps.
And also let me add to the committee, there's another school of thought, and that is that if an employee gets the flu, they take their personal time off, whether it's 7 days, 10 days, 12 days, whatever the flu is. And we have folks from time to time who have flu that are gone for an extended period of time, and they have to cover that with their PTO, personal time off. So, I mean, that's another school of thought that maybe we don't extend it, but I think we should.
It's also a matter of what will, that's in a legal, potential legal issue. It's also a question of how the employees view what the council does. And do they think it's fair, and are they being treated fairly? Because what we want to do, of course, besides be good for, do everything that's right for the citizens, we don't want to lose employees over people feeling that they weren't treated properly by the city. And I'm sure you are all aware of that, but the employee relations is another facet that always considered in these hard decisions y'all have to make.
I do see some value in the employee relations aspect of it, and also, employees, encouraging employees to properly report when they've been exposed.
Right.
Without the fear of I can't afford to take off, and they show up to work, and the next thing you know, we've got an entire department down because somebody was afraid of being able to pay their bills.
I think that's an excellent reason to do that, is in the FFCRA, for perhaps we are talking about 60 days at a time, because I think you're right, so if they don't have time, they're going to try to come to work, or a family member's ill, and they're not ill, but they're living with someone that is, and then they bring it to the workplace. Then if we had had some foresight to give them that time off, they could have stayed away for a while. So that's an excellent thought to put out there.
Yeah, it sounds like there's been pretty low usage. 13% used. We're 75% through the calendar year, and we've used 13% of the total hours that were allocated.
Correct.
It doesn't seem like anybody's really abusing that. You and I had talked about that, Alan.
Yes.
So,
And that's the reason we got the numbers.
and I could see possibly making employees use their existing time off first to prevent any abuse of that, but at the same time, it doesn't look like there has been. It was expiring December 31st, and there wasn't a mad dash to get 2 weeks off. So,
From an
That
employee,
was a good thought.
I think the biggest problem is one that you've already mentioned, and that is somebody getting sick out here for whatever reason. And a city employee, and then they decide, listen, I can't afford not to have that paycheck, or I can't afford to take off or anything like that. I'm out of time or whatever it is, and they come on to work. And then you can screen all you want to, but they're still going to be infecting other people. Whereas if you have something like this, continue this in place for another 3 months, it looks to me like it might help limit the spread among city employees and departments. And two, based on usage that we have seen over the last 10 months, we're not talking about a whole lot of dollars going out for this, probably. And we also know that we would hope that over the next month or 2 months, the vaccine issue is going to accelerate significantly here. So,
Well, and you could also tie that in with people getting the vaccine, because I hear there's some, people that say they're not going to, so you could even think about if you want to grant it, you might grant a bigger number to people that have the vaccine, because they probably won't use it, and a smaller amount to people that say, I don't want to be, somebody use me, and you avoid that, I've got to see it.
have that issue at home too.
Don't we all love Jim?
Did I not read the other day where you can actually require employees
Yes, sir.
to take the vaccine?
Yes, sir.
Is there, what's the,
No, I'm sorry, I didn't know that somebody was gonna, I'm sorry, I didn't know someone would be knocking at my door, I'm sorry. And my dog reacted to it, even though he's deaf, he heard it.
what's the,
You know,
Alan, what
like
is,
that.
Alan, what is the current, what quarantine and isolation policies are we following right now that's required? for
Dr.
employees?
Doggett continues on the 14 days. CDC has changed those somewhat, but Dr. Doggett feels safest at the 14 days. So that's what we're sticking with our employees.
Okay.
There's no, no,
Alan, remember that I told you I had a therapy appointment for my gentleman that had shoulder surgery not too long ago, and I'm in rehab. I shouldn't have said therapy, that sounded like my head. Anyway, I had a rehab appointment in a few minutes. I thought I should ask if you think there's any other thing that you wanted to ask me about before I chimed out of the meeting.
No, ma'am, I'm getting head shakes right now. Thank you, Betty, as always. You've been a great help, and thank you so much.
If you have time, if you have just more, give me a holler on my phone and let me know what you have decided to do. I applaud you for being real positive about granting this, because I think that's going to win you great employees, even greater than they already are, and better and everything. I think it could be a win-win for everyone.
Betty, for your information, I was on the council in the early 90s when we revoked our civil service, and that was very interesting and lively times.
I tell you, I've been a lot of calls about it because I now write the book, the law book on civil service, and that's the only time it ever happened. And I get calls, probably 2 or 3 a year, about cities that trying to get rid of it. And they call me and I say, well, here, I'll tell you how they did it. That was a fun time, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am, it was interesting.
Yeah, it was. Well, I'm sure glad nobody ever came back and tried to get it back.
Amen.
Mr. Chair, are you ready for a
Eddie,
motion?
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to sign out, my gentlemen. Thank you for asking me to help you.
All right, thank you, Betty.
thank you, Betty.
Have fun at
Bye.
rehab.
Oh, yeah, are there any other questions? If not, if you're ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend to the council the extension of this program till March 31st, 2021.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of extending the city's emergency COVID pay policy to reflect FFCRA to March 31st. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Hearing none, that will pass to council tonight with a positive recommendation. No other business, we'll stand adjourned.
Thank you.